Great pleasure now to be joined by strategic thinker and top policy maker Brahma Chellaney, an author and columnist, joining us on all of that. Brahma, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you joining us on the show. Just wanted to get your sense of the SCO. How do you see this particular grouping, especially given China's heft and the presence, of course, of countries like Pakistan in the SCO?
Look at the New Delhi Declaration, which has emerged from the SCO summit. It is heavy on pious but empty commitments by heads of state, heads of government. For example, it talks about member states being committed to respecting territorial integrity and sovereignty, to abjuring threat or use of force. And the irony is that all this being said in a declaration of a summit that includes India and China that are locked in a military standoff for more than 3 years because China has disregarded all these principles. It's not only threatening the use of force, actually is employing force to change the territorial status quo in Ladakh.
Yeah, but China's only one part of those contradictions. There are other contradictions. You had Pakistan sitting out there while declarations are being made about terrorism. I mean, what greater irony could be there than that? For example, talk about not invading other people's territory was being said. Beijing was sitting there. China was sitting there. Vladimir Putin was actually sitting there and listening to all of this. So, yeah, I mean, let's face it, some of the countries who are members of the SCO aren't necessarily abiding by any of these principles when it comes to themselves.
In fact, several of the member states of the SCO openly flout international norms and international law. Their foreign policy for long has refused to respect international law and international rules. And this is the problem with the SCO. If you look at the composition of the SCO, now it has 9 members with the addition of Iran. India is the only established democracy in the SCO. If India was not a member of the SCO would be seen as an anti-Western club of autocracies. And this has been reinforced by the addition of Iran as a new SCO member. America's main enemies, China, Russia, and Iran, are all members of the SCO. So India's membership helps to lend respectability to the SCO. It also helps to blunt the labeling of the SCO as an anti-Western grouping. So India brings tangible benefits to the SCO. The question is, what does India get in return from being a member of the SCO? In fact, the SCO hardly meshes with India's interests. You begin with the very name of it, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. In other words, the very name bears China's imprint. The initiative was conceived by China in 2001, and China increasingly dominates the SCO. It uses the SCO to advance its commercial and strategic interests, and because Western policy has pushed Russia toward China, Russia also values the SCO to cement its partnership with China. The SCO includes both of India's regional adversaries, China and Pakistan. In fact, Pakistan was brought into SCO by China as a condition for letting India join the SCO. And out of the 9 members of the SCO, 7 are part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, which India has opposed since its launch. Only Russia is the other member that is not part of the BRI. And the fact that the SCO deliberations are conducted only in 2 languages, Mandarin and Russian, underscores the Sino-Russian shadow over the grouping.
So let me just play devil's advocate here, Brahma Chellaney. I mean, look, there is a certain history to the SCO. It came about as a result of people in Central Asian republics worrying a little bit about what's happening there, American interference and the like. That may have been one of the major reasons why India also went into the SCO. It was being argued that we need to play a role in the Central Asian countries, and it's better to be part of, for India to be part of groupings like this, to try and influence them from inside, rather than quit and walk out and then have no influence at all or no say at all. So in other words, keep as many links and connections open as you possibly can in what may well be a multipolar world. That would be the contrary view to what you've been saying.
Yes, some argue that it's better to keep your enemies close. In 1971, President Lyndon Johnson famously said that he was talking about a political rival at home, that it's probably better to have him inside the tent pissing out than outside the tent pissing in. But as an Arab proverb goes, it's better to have 1,000 enemies outside of the tent than one inside the tent. So it depends, where you stand on this issue. I'm not saying that India should walk out of the SCO, but I think it's important to understand, to grasp that the SCO provides no tangible benefits to India. The benefits are largely symbolic.
So Brahma, let's just take that thought forward. I mean, look, you could say that whatever happens, India is not likely to see eye to eye with China in the foreseeable future. China is going to be a malign influence in the group forum in some form or the other, and probably very similar with Pakistan. That's another malign influence, certainly when it comes to India. But when it comes to some of the other countries in the SCO, India would like to get back to the sort of historic and traditional ties it has had with many of the Central Asian republics, for example. Now, there are interests that are common out there. Even when it comes to a country like Iran that has just been allowed into the SCO, we've had the Prime Minister also referring, for example, to the Chabahar port, how that could be utilized, how India can get direct access to the Central Asian republics. So those could be some of the actual Indian interests that could be advanced by being part of the SCO or by engaging people through this forum.
Well, Vikram, you're right, to a very limited extent, because SCO is a multilateral forum. It provides limited scope for bilateral engagement. But there are other forums through which India can deepen its engagement with Central Asian republics and with Iran. Iran, of course, is a very important neighbor of India. It's unfortunate that India has actually snapped its energy links with Iran because of US sanctions. And that has resulted in India being seen in Iran as an unreliable partner. So India has to mend its relations with Iran, but this cannot be done through the SCO forum. It has to be done on a bilateral basis. Similarly, deeper engagement with the Central Asian states like Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan, and also Turkmenistan, which is not part of the SCO, deeper engagement with them should be an Indian foreign policy priority. But then again, being part of the SCO is not going to advance your bilateral interests with these countries. You have to pursue those interests separately.
All right, Brahma Chellaney, we hear you loud and clear. Pursue these interests, but pursue them bilaterally. Don't have too many hopes from an organization like the SCO, is what you seem to be saying. Thank you so much for joining me with that perspective. But let's just get another really important strategic thinker to come in on that and to see what he feels about some of the issues that Brahma was talking about. Former Indian ambassador to China, Ashok Kantha, now joining us. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. We were just hearing, there seems to be a tightrope walk that India is really, seems to be following. We've had this rapturous reception to Prime Minister Modi in the United States. There's the Quad. India is, it's talking to France right now. And at the same time, this SCO meeting has just taken place, filled with people who are anti-Western and people who have a very strong view about the West. Is this a tough tightrope walk that is being done right now?
Yeah, there is a bit of tightrope walking, no doubt about it. For one thing, as you know, it was a virtual summit. It was not an in-person summit. So instead of 2 days of meeting, we had just about 3 hours of meeting. In terms of outcome, in terms of projection, SU summit clearly is very different from how G20 summit will look like. In SU summit, as you know, we had a New Delhi Declaration, which contained fairly well-known positions. Then we had a joint statement on countering radicalization, and we had another joint statement on digital transactions. India decided to keep away from another document which has been issued. That's on SCO, Economic Strategy 2030. SCO as an organization is somewhat limited. I think this is something we need to take note of. We decided to join SCO in 2017, and I was involved in the process of negotiations leading up to that decision. Fully mindful of the fact that there are certain contradictions within the organization, and what we can achieve in SCO will also be somewhat limited. Nevertheless, we decided to go ahead largely because we wanted to have this platform which brings together Central Asian republics, apart from other countries like Russia and China, and then in 2017 Pakistan joined, now Iran had joined. So it provides a good forum, it provides a good platform, but there is a deficit of strategic convergence among member countries. So we have to start with that.
Well, Ambassador Kanta, when you and other people were negotiating this and negotiating India's entry to the SCO, when the entire talk about strategic convergence, some would say that when it comes to the SCO, it's the exact opposite, because if there's one body that seems to be filled with all of India's adversaries and enemies, tactical and strategic, Pakistan and China being the obvious examples, both of them are actually present in the SCO. So when you were taking the decisions and negotiating some of this way back in 2017, was the reason partly that it's better to be part of a grouping like the SCO, even if India's adversaries are there, so that you can have some influence on what it's doing, rather than have no influence at all? Was that really the thinking, the strategic thinking?
I think there were a couple of considerations. So the most important consideration was that we attach a great deal of importance to our engagement with Central Asian republics, but we are disadvantaged there because of lack of connectivity, and our footprint to the ground is somewhat limited. So SCO provides a platform for engaging with them on an annual basis. And secondly, the factor you mentioned, it's important to be part of the tent, and also to see that we can influence outcomes of this organization.
But Ambassador Kanta, some would argue that the correct thing to do with the Central Asian republics, and with Iran for that matter, would be to develop the bilateral relations instead. Talk directly to Iran about Chabahar. You don't have to do it through a SCO meeting. Directly maintain the historic relations that India has had with the Central Asian republics. Keep those bilateral ties going instead of worrying about a multilateral organization like SCO. That would be one way of thinking.
You're absolutely right. In fact, SCO is no substitute for a bilateral engagement with Central Asian republics and with Iran. In fact, that's why in 2015, Prime Minister Modi, paid a visit to 5 Central Asian republics at the same time, which was unprecedented. So the primary mode of engagement with Central Asia will have to be through bilateral engagement, and not through instrumentality of SCO, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a somewhat limited organization.
Right. Well, Ambassador Kanta, now that we have you with us, I just wanted to get your sense of the future. What happens now when it comes to the SCO or even BRICS, which is going to be the next big meeting other than G20 that's coming up? BRICS is a much larger forum. A lot of other countries are now wanting to join. Do you think other forums are going to become really, really important? And what do you think India should do, given that not just the SCO, but even BRICS could start becoming dominated more and more by China? This entire talk, for example, about settling oil trade in Chinese yuan or building up the Chinese yuan in some form as an alternative to the dollar. Now, that could be the agenda in forums like BRICS as well. How do you think India should play this, given that I'm sure India is not going to be entirely comfortable having the dollar being replaced by the Chinese yuan as a dominant currency? I'm sure that is something that would be worrying India a little bit, because the last thing that India should probably want is for the yuan to become some sort of a default currency in settling anything.
I don't think there's any real risk of yuan, replacing US dollar as the reserve currency or the primary currency for international trade. China, being the largest trading nation in the world, does play an important role in international commerce, and they are trying to position yuan as international currency. But there are a whole lot of problems there. In this SCO summit, this point was made that when it comes to trade between Russia and China, for instance, 80% of the trade is being denominated either in rubles or in renminbi. But that's also because sanctions imposed by the Western countries and the lack of access to trade in US dollar. So this is going to be a process. Clearly, will not be inclined to see that renminbi replaces US dollar, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. There are a whole lot of problems, including the fact that China maintains restrictions on capital account when it comes to renminbi as an international currency.
Ambassador Kantha, thank you so much for joining us, and we will, of course, keep talking to you in the build-up to the BRICS summit and also, of course, to G20. Thank you so much to get that sense from you.